Local stories, local people. We're taking you inside Western Mass news. It's the Even Better Western Mass podcast with Dave Madsen.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Even Better Western Mass podcast. Wherever you are, hope you're doing well. It is summer. Almost the end of June right now, and we are 3 months into the shutdown that started in March as part of the COVID-19 pandemic. Still doesn't make sense to say we're getting back to normal, whatever that normal is or will be. Now, here in Massachusetts, restaurants have reopened for outside dining. Places I've seen seem to be busy, but I have to wonder if it's worth the expense that many have incurred to set up outdoor dining. Time will tell, I guess. Same goes, too, for casinos reopening across the state. Now, this week, the State Gaming Commission set up their guidelines for casinos to reopen. They wouldn't allow craps, roulette, or poker. Nearly 6-foot-tall plexiglass dividers will be required at blackjack tables that'll separate dealers from players and players from each other. Seth Stratton, the MGM Springfield Vice President and General Counsel, is concerned, though, that the limited number of people allowed on the gaming floor would make it difficult to operate the facility and may not be economically feasible. Again, time will tell. Well, my guest again this week is Tommy Shea, the son of Irish immigrants who grew up on Springfield's Hungry Hill. Tom Shea spent 40 years working at the Springfield newspaper, starting as a sports writer, finishing his sports career covering the Red Sox. Tom left sports, worked as a general assignment reporter for 10 years before being given his own column in The Republican. He left The Republican in 2012 to become senior foreign editor for The National, a newspaper in Abu Dhabi. Tom is now an author, freelance writer, and writing coach. This week, Tom and I talk about his reporting career and his coverage of the priest sexual abuse scandal in the Springfield diocese. As a devout altar boy at Springfield's Our Lady of Hope Church, Tom told me he was convinced that he would someday follow his uncle's path of becoming a priest. Tom's reporting helped to uncover molestation cases by local Catholic priests.
So now you left the Republican in 2012 to take a job with the National in Abu Dhabi. Now, at that point in time in your life, that was quite a move.
Oh, yeah. It was one of those things where a former student of mine, Ian Ramboletti from Holyoke, was in Abu Dhabi. And he asked, he said, would you ever consider going? And I said, yeah, I'd never been to that part of the world. I've been very lucky. I've traveled a lot. And it was the last English language newspaper probably founded in the world. And and you name the continent, there was somebody working there. There was a person who used to work for the BBC that sat like over here, fellow who used to work for the Washington Post sat to my right, woman who worked for what's the the NPR in Canada? CBC? Is that what it's called?
CBC, I think it is. Yeah, Canadian Broadcasting. Yeah.
There was a fellow from India that worked on the desk, and it was it was something. And the paper, the folks who started the paper, it was a gorgeous publication, gorgeous. But I wasn't sure who exactly read it. That it seemed more tilted toward people who had come to Abu Dhabi as tourists. And in Abu Dhabi, it was always kind of baseball season in the sense of the weather. And I think you are a golfer, and it was like a golfer's heaven. And the people, the sheikhs that run the country were already thinking that what they wanted was like an adult playground, golf, tennis all year round, that they thought that only because like one of my co-workers, said, well, I'm going to go to Moscow for, like a vacation. And, I said, wow, that's a long flight. And he goes, no, it's only like 6 hours or something. You know what I mean? That when you're in a place but it was a very British, like kind of centric newspaper. Like there'd be fellows there talking about covering the Falklands War. Mm-hmm. And, it was really, it was very cool. And the only thing, I could get everything I wanted except like maybe 2 or 3 weeks in, except for like Skippy peanut butter. And then I got Skippy peanut butter, and it was different, but it was great, you know.
What a great experience.
It was. And my baseball story is there was a man there who had come from Scotland, and he decided he had to learn, he wanted to pick up a new sport. And I think 2012 was the year of Bobby Valentine managing the Red Sox.
Yes.
And this fellow's name is Liam Carney, and he decided he was going to follow the Red Sox, and he bought the baseball package, and there was a supermarket there, and this is 14 hours on a plane away from America, and there was Sports Illustrated with Bobby Valentine on the cover, and I remember I bought the Sports Illustrated like to give him, and he's since moved to New York, and he's still a gigantic Red Sox fan. And he told me, I'm not a drinking man or anything, and but I was in New York City, and there's a bar, Professor Tom's. It's like maybe on 14th or 15th Street in New York City. That's the Red Sox bar. And Liam went there. I went there one night, and the Red Sox, I've never heard any concert louder, like when the Red Sox were winning. It was just deafening. And then they lost, and everybody like kind of ran out of the building. But anyways, I'm off. But he was a Red Sox fan. They gained one fan in Abu Dhabi anyways.
About 10 years ago, you and Suzanne interviewed each other about working as writers while living under one roof. And I was fascinated by that.
You did good research. Yeah. No. Well, Suzanne is, for any writers watching, listening, is that she really does the work. I mean, she sits down and like probably the most important thing for any writer is putting your fanny in a seat and doing the work, and not reading baseball rumors on MLB traderumors.com. You know what I mean? Or looking up more things about Bob Dylan than probably need to be known. But it's she's but it seems very natural to us. You know, we'll just ask each other questions, or like we're big believers in reading out loud, in the sense of that you can hear. Well, you do that all the time. You understand the thing of cadence, or like a false word, or a word that just doesn't quite work. And like for me, that was taught to me by Madeline Blaze. She's a journalism professor at UMass, and she wrote the book.
No Maddie well, yeah.
Yeah,
I taught up there, yeah.
Is right, and that did wonders for my, at least my head, anyways, for reading out loud. And so I'm one of these people that obviously during the virus, I like hard newspapers, but the only one I've been getting because they delivered is the Wall Street Journal. And I'm a mad person for ripping things out of and serving kind of like as a Reader's Digest kind of, I say, oh, somebody would like that story. And like, we'll do that. And Suzanne is much better on the computer than I am. And so she'll find things that I'm interested in. And so it's just like a sharing, I don't know. It just doesn't seem odd or weird to me. And, you work in an office your whole life too, is that I like the sound of her typing. I like that. And, there's something very nice about it and familiar about it. So,
what are the two of you working on now? What's Suzanne working on? What are you working on?
Suzanne's working on a bit about going to Catholic school, like these short vignettes that will end up being tied together, because Suzanne went to St. Peter and Paul in Three Rivers, which is part of Palmer. Yeah. And she's always working on something, but that's like the forefront. And she's also, which is really kind of ironic, since she's very Polish American, but when we first got together, this is as adults, people would ask her, where did you take Irish step dancing? She, and she's a terrific accordion player, and her father once told her, you should start an all-girl polka band. You'd make a killing at weddings. And she would, actually. Well, anyways, she's really gotten into the Irish, mindset. And she's teaching a course right now about Ireland for Bay Path University. So, like last night, I think it was last night that, I could hear, them all talking about Ireland. And I'm working on a book that's kind of Bob Dylan related, and also another one on like an unsung figure from the recovery movement. And my thing, I have to stop researching, the whole researching thing is, I enjoy that. Writing is hard, or it can be hard. And I also teach at Bay Path in their MFA program. And some of the writing out there is just, spectacular.
Well, I so admire what you do. I mean, everything I have always written has been short, because that's what television news is. To be able to sit down and research and put a book together is just, I look at it and I find it would be so overwhelming for me. To see you be able to do that,
see, I don't think so. I think, the one of the people, do you remember Ray Fitzgerald? He used to write for the Boston Globe.
Yep.
And Jim Fox was like this too, is the economy of their language was so impressive. And the thing that, and again, this sounds like blowing smoke, but it's not. It's like you can tell a story in like 2 minutes, and there's something there. Meaning, like, the who, what, when, where, how, why. And, again, like when I started out a long time ago, that, I thought more was better. But a lot of times, that you can explain something tightly and, full of all the information, I relate to that. And again, this is that then television has something like Frontline that goes very deep into something like Syria, or racism, or the tobacco, and whatever. Sure. that can be. I mean, I think it works off each other, and this is with when anything, really bad happens, police, fire, and reporters head to the scene.
Yeah.
While everybody else might be going in the other direction. And I don't know, I think it all kind of, there's some kind of cohesion to it. And, but again, I'd recommend everybody subscribe to the New Yorker or the New York Times, Washington Post. I think it's important to be informed, and it comes in all kinds of areas. In the sense, I always go, I didn't know that, and that I always felt my job was to tell people what they didn't, that they might not have known.
Sure.
And
find that, that bit of information that they wouldn't know. As you look back, Tom, and you go back to 1972 when you started, is there, covering sports or covering news or as a columnist, is there one story that meant more to you than anything else that really stands out?
Oh yeah, like the Danny Croteau and the Catholic Church scandal. I came to that when I left sports. You were general assignments. That meant, what this means is that you show up at work and you could be interviewing you could be interviewing somebody who won the lottery, or someone under indictment. And and so there was great fun to that because it was like an education, because I didn't know. I watched Judd for the Defense. Was that the name of the show?
Yep. Yeah, I remember that show.
I didn't know anything about courts and things, so I would ask very obvious, very probably in whoever I was interviewing, dumb questions, but I needed to understand it before, like I read it. And I was teaching a class at Springfield College, I think in sports writing on a Saturday night. And again, this is before everything. And it might have been Jim Denver, who was at the Indians or Falcons or whatever they were, maybe in 19. And Peter Goonan, who's still working at the paper, covers City Hall, said that, well, I took religion as one of my beats. I was interested in religion, and I would do stories, let's say, about how former candy stores became storefront churches, or how does a priest or a pastor, a rabbi come up with sermon, whatever, and it was a great beat. Well, anyways, Peter Goonan calls and asked me, had I ever heard of a Father Lavigny? And I hadn't, and he said, well, he was arrested. And I go, oh, well, I come in Monday, and that became my job. And for the next, this was 1991, the next 4 years, that was my job. And it was a terrible job. And but I felt like,
as someone growing up in Hungry Hill and in Springfield, it was a personal story.
Oh yeah, because it's one of these things where I went 12 years of Catholic school, and I wanted to be a priest when I was a little kid, and it was just one of those things that I was never, I lucked out that, I didn't. But, like I was the oldest 7 kids, and, Irish Catholic immigrant parents, and it could have been me, and it ended up people that I knew, of course I didn't know at the time. And it was, like, and this was really early on, and people, really, didn't believe it. And, but the slow movement of, pretty courageous people like coming forward, and the, power of the law, and I'm sorry, I keep going off track, but did you see the movie Spotlight?
I did, yes. Yep.
Well, the real hero of the whole thing was, Constance Sweeney, who was a cathedral graduate, Judge Constance Sweeney, who released the record. You know what I mean? And she was just a small bit in the movie, and I don't know her. But the thing is, finally, things were revealed that couldn't be denied.
But Tom, I can remember reading the pieces that you wrote back then, and thinking how difficult it must have been for you to write these. But I think your background and the sensitivity you brought to them made your story stand out from all the others.
Well, thank you. But I don't know. It was, and this, you're in the news business, is that there was a city editor. There were 2 city editors, actually. One's deceased, John Bart, and another one is Larry Hervé. And a lot of times, you get phone calls, and I'd just listen the victims, and we found out early that the T-shirt, I won't get into anything, but T-shirts were part of the story. And so like I could figure out, when someone would come forward and they would tell something that I go, and, editors obviously would look over and I'd go, no, I've got to, no, I got to keep talking. And there was a lot of in between
Mm-hmm.
that and we were very and again 40 what was his name, Alan Cohn.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's running. He's running for Congress in Florida.
As what?
He's running as a Democrat. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, tell him I remember him. He was.
Alan was on that story. Yeah.
He definitely was, and I remember we'd Wayne Faniff and Larry McDermott and I would watch, and this is again 40 News. If Alan, because you had to be very careful. You didn't want to goof something up because there would be a tidal wave of you're making this up. You're exaggerating, and there was and so tell Alan that I remember that
But it had to be hard for you too, because as you mentioned, that there were a lot of people who didn't believe this and thought that, well, the newspapers and the television stations were, how dare you go after the priests and the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was hard. At least it was hard for me. I knew the bishops, and I knew a lot of, it was my beat, and I don't want to be. I'm a reporter. I'm not a judge or a jury. I'm not a lawyer, but it was. And another guy that it was grinding. And then, Brian Melly, who's now, he's from Amherst. He was a reporter and he knew the way around court things. And he's now working for the Associated Press in Los Angeles. And it was great to have, somebody that, like was there, you know what I mean? Yeah. That you could, and then, in 95, they gave me the column, which I was surprised, but it was a great relief. And then after that, Billy Zajac just did like historic work. And he was just marvelous. And, the one priest, I mean, there were a couple that stood up, but, Father Jim Scahill's from my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And I remember, like, as a little kid, he must have been in seminary then, like he coached a 12-14 or 14-16 team, and him in infield and to the team. And he had a great infield. The only person that I ever saw as good as him was Johnny Pesky, at the Red Sox, that he wouldn't start like third baseman, shortstop, second baseman, first baseman. He'd hit it like to the shortstop, then the first base, you know what I mean? And kept players on their toes. And, I've been, I'm from here. So, I was selling papers in front of the church. I remember his father, off to the side before he went into church having the last smoke. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. And let's say in my church, there was Richie Meehan, John Coons, yeah. And they ended up, but it didn't happen to me. But I realized, it was a thing where, if priests showed you attention, the thing that I guess surprised me about the whole thing is I really thought the church would do right by these people. Really did. That Monday morning, whatever it was, let's say if it was November 4th or 5th, I thought that, I liked Bishop McGuire a great deal. He was a very nice man. But I thought, oh no, once he hears about this, he'll do the right thing. Well,
Yeah, it didn't happen.
and,
And
you know,
it's
like,
still going on.
and, like I would get, it was a cross thing of, like information, that, I knew, I thought enough people, and, it was just,
And I feel the same way. I think for those of us who were brought up Catholic and spend so much time in the church, it was and still is disappointment.
yeah. And well, it was disappointment and criminal.
Yeah.
And, like the thing, and, so much time, let's say since 91 has passed, and I don't want to be, talking about the dead. I believe in, God, and I believe, judged, and I'm not perfect, and but it was such a, it was just heinous all over the place, and let's say the priests who say were abusers, like someone pointed out to me, well, they're sick, they have something. But the thing that got me was that really the silence, the whole standing up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, I don't know, like it was just, I do. I was very thankful, let's say, for getting the column in '95. Not so much for ego gratification or whatever. The thing was that I could write about, like happy things. I could write about, like kind of unsung heroes, and that was very refreshing to me.
After that, especially, yeah.
Yeah, it just, and I don't want to, get into my drama as far as, but it was very wonderful thing. And, I would still every now and again, dip into the church stuff. And, and I also realize, I'm rambling, sorry.
No, not, but it's fascinating, and it's
Oh,
part of our history in Western Mass. It really is. And
well, it is, and it's the kind of thing that I don't know, it's it is. I know Ray's big story, where the POWs coming back.
yeah,
And what's your big story? What do you think?
until then, until 9/11, it was the Beauregard Scavina, the deaths of those two police officers,
Yeah.
9/11, and then in later years it became the tornado because it just seemed so incomprehensible.
Well, you're right about the income. I remember listening to the weather that day. I don't remember what station, and I thought, gee, why are they scaring? There's no tornadoes gonna, and then, well, we know, yeah, the tornado was I don't know, but again, I have no idea. Maybe you have a better idea. You taught journalism. Is what's the future? But it is, again, a tremendous job. It's just, I don't know. I always felt like it was sort of, public service, and I get paid, and I get to know more in different things. I just feel that whatever the bargain was, that I made out better. Like it was just a blast.
Well, we do learn every day, and I think that's the beauty of it. And your career, my career, Ray's career, to get to live and work where we grew up,
Oh,
and do what we love to do.
mhm.
There's nothing better.
Oh no, and I think, and you know this too, is the you realize that news, everybody's interested. That I don't care. They know, and they have to know, and that's why we tune in. That's why we read, and I just hope, pray, that there's just generations and generations and generations to come.
I loved it too because we learn something new every day.
Yeah, and it is like, you go to where the news is. I mean, at least
Yeah.
you try, and like I know, speaking for me is whatever, you always try to be fair and you try to be honest. And I'll go back to Sister Patricia Feely at Cathedral High School, that she, in a journalism class, she talked about everybody's going to eventually have to write hard stories, and she said, put your name where you're putting, the accused or the and see if you would write it the same way, or put your mother's name or your brother's name or your sister's name. And I was always kind of mindful. I was always mindful of that, and I don't know, but well, you asked the question that elicited the response. That's good reporting. Like when someone stops chatting about baseball.
Well, I mean, we've got so much more we can talk about. I think I feel a whole other podcast just about where reporting is headed too, because
well, what do you think?
Oh God, I wish I knew. I think, our attention spans are so much shorter today, and it's, this instant gratification and taking what they see or what they hear for granted instead of, I always thought with news, the idea was, especially with television news, was, all right, we'll whet your appetite with this little bit of the story in 2 minutes. Now it's up to you to go to the newspaper or to Newsweek to learn more about it. But through the years, that kind of stopped, and I still think we need that.
I don't know what form it'll come back to, but we want to know. I think most people still want to know. Maybe that's the optimist in me.
I think you always, as a reporter, you always have to be optimistic.
Yeah. Well, you know what? To go back to that's what baseball is, right?
Yeah.
So tomorrow, and the Brooklyn Dodgers, I think were the original Red Sox. You know what I mean? To wait till next year, and there's always that, that the winning streak can start tomorrow, and it's embedded. That I don't know. That's part of the thing. But then again, if there's men on second and third and there's nobody out, I'm not very optimistic. Usually, it's the other team. I can get my Fitbit steps like walking around.
Pacing.
Pacing, yeah. And of course, I'm not superstitious except when it comes to baseball.
Except to baseball. I love, as the gifted writer, you brought this full circle for me. Tommy, I can't thank you enough.
My thanks again to Tommy Shea for joining me on the Even Better Western Mass podcast. Now, if you're a baseball fan looking for a good summer read, may I suggest Dingers, the 101 most memorable home runs in baseball history. It was co-written by Tom with Joshua Schifrin. I'm Dave Madsen. Thanks for watching or listening to the Even Better Western Mass podcast. Stay well, and if you can, join me next week.